Hi, everybody. For this episode, we're joined by Sherrita Allen from Missouri in the United States. She's the executive director at the Covering House and has a broad range of direct care experiences. She has educated other professionals at Washington and Webster University, and since 2014, Sherrita has been exclusively counseling survivors of sex trafficking. Sherrita, thanks for being a guest on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
You know, you're a self-described people person. A lot of people might describe that differently. How do you describe yourself as a people person? What does that mean?
It means I love people. I genuinely believe that there is inherently good in people. You just have to look for it. Some are easier to love than others, but I genuinely enjoy people, enjoying meeting a new friend every day, which is one of my goals, is always to meet a new friend. But I really love people and just love the camaraderie. I love the connection that you have with people.
Yeah, well, you're a real honest, sincere person. I can see why you probably make a lot of friends everywhere you go, and you probably do make a new friend every day. And when we were getting to know each other, you told me that people are always good regardless. And I want to know, how do you always find the good in others when sometimes it's so hard to do?
I think my faith plays a lot into that. I think, they say we were born sinful, but just with the way God looks at us, he loves us and looks at us as his children. And so, who am I to say anything different about his people? So I try to look at people the way God look at them. And if he can see some good in me, then I can definitely find some good in somebody else. That's pretty easy, because there are days that I know that I'm unlovable. So I always feel God's love. So I always want to extend that to other people. It's what I believe.
That is great. And it's so wonderful that you're always looking for the best in people. Where did your deep-seated faith come from?
My parents, born and raised Pentecostal apostolic, and a joke that Jesus came with my last name. So I've never known anything but church. And so my parents have lived and walked the life of loving Christ in front of us, me and my sisters, all of our lives. And as a late teen, about 15, 16, when I had the experience to really learn God for myself, not through, what my parents were saying, but exactly through, my encounter with him. I've just never turned back. It's always been a love relationship. And no matter how many critics that say God doesn't exist, I know my experience. For me, he is real. And I have my parents to thank for that.
That's wonderful. So around 14 or 15, something happened. What happened that you really anchored your such a strong belief in Jesus?
I got pregnant when I was a teenager, and it was one of those things that it was embarrassing. I had a lot of people turn their backs on me. My friends, we were the proud V crew. So we were proud in our, purity and our sexuality, and that's what, the Bible wanted and what God expected. And I got caught up with this handsome guy with these beautiful brown eyes, and now my life turned. So in the midst of all of that turmoil of feeling worthless, feeling like, I had failed my family, my parents, my sisters, my friends, myself. So I had such high hopes to be, this great person. And I thought that, I messed it all up. But in the midst of that turmoil, I promise that experience with God that I was talking about before was what turned my life. The way I felt like God just wrapped himself around me, and he showed me who was really in my corner. I know my aunt stepped up, really my mom's sister, she really stepped up and loved me through that really, really hard time in my life. And then just that connection I had with God, that he told me, regardless of what was happening in my life right now, I'm not going to leave you. I'm right here with you. You're going to make it through this, and you're still mine. And even thinking about it now, I'm in my 40s, but I think about that moment in my teenage years when I considered dying. I was like, I would rather die than live this life. And God said, no, that you are mine, and you will, you're a world changer, and you're going to do this. So, girded up my loins and went about my business. The baby I didn't keep the baby, didn't have the baby, wasn't a live birth. And, so that was pretty devastating. But I think just that experience also was, a catalyst for my changing my life, and how I decided to, become that advocate or that support for people who were in my situation.
Wonderful that you're able to turn that into some sort of positive. I know your family was pretty committed to the church and religion. And how did that go over when your parents found out that you were pregnant? What was that like for you?
They were really hurt. And they didn't shame me with religion. That's just not my parents. That's not how they do things anyway. So I was really grateful for that. But they were just disappointed because they just really wanted my sisters and I to make it out of high school and not have to do the things that, that that our family has gone through with having, children early or out of wedlock, or having to suffer with, poverty and things. They had so many high hopes for us. So it was really disappointing for them. I actually had a conversation with my dad a couple of days ago, and I was talking about, hey, I'm going to be on a podcast and things, and was telling him all the kind of things that were been going on. I was catching him up on my life, and he said to me, "You're an answered prayer." And before I burst into tears and cried like a baby. And I was like, well, what was the prayer? And he said that my children would be successful and prosperous. He said, and God is showing that through you in your life and everything that you're doing. He said, you care for people so well. He was like, you make me proud. And then, of course, the tears came flooding. I cried like a newborn. I was a blubbery mess. So, it was,
well, you've done such wonderful things for so many people, and sometimes the most difficult populations from my perspective, sex trafficked youth, to be able to do that work and to not be so affected by that is just a miracle in and of itself, that you can somehow survive all that. But I also want to know a little bit, were your parents people persons? Did they also just love everybody and outgoing and looking to meet a new friend every day like you are?
That is so my dad. My dad is the people person, and my mom is a real big caregiver. So my mom says that I may look just like my mom, but I act just like my dad. So my dad, he knows everybody, and he's just real big social, and he will talk your ear off. But my mom is a caregiver. I was talking to her this morning, and she's a foster parent, and she has a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old right now. And the 2-year-old has her just running through the house going crazy. It was really funny, but I just watch her, and she was talking about continuing to be a foster parent or not, because these kids are going to get to go back home to their family, which we're excited about. But even in the midst of that, before she became an official foster parent, my mom had learned even from her mom how to just take in people. We care for people. If somebody needed a place to stay, then, if you had an extra bed, then they stayed. And if it was, my mom said all the time, if you could cook for 2, you can cook for 10. So it was never hard to find extra food to feed someone who was hungry, or to, if somebody needed a place to stay, or all I've seen my whole life is caring for people. So I think it was inevitable that this was the track I was going to take.
It sure sounds like it. It sounds like you're just the perfect mix of your mom and dad together. You've got such a caregiving side of you, but you're also so social and so easy to get to know. Your parents must be very proud and grateful for what you do, as I know I am, of how much work you give back to your community and how much you deeply care. When you were growing up, was school easy or hard for you?
School was easy, I think. So I went to the Normandy School District in St. Louis, and they had this program called the Independent Study Program, called ISP. And ISP went from 4th grade to 12th grade. And I was able to be in it my whole school career, academic career. And I love learning. I still have a love for learning. I keep getting called a nerd the other day, and it's like I come home, I greet my husband, I cook dinner, and then I'm like, you need anything? I talk a little bit, and then I go read a book, because I have this hunger for learning and just getting to know something. So, I don't know. I built a lot of relationships, and I had a lot of different gamut of friends. So not only my nerd group, but also, whatever, like my friends from the neighborhood who, a little sketchy. We did some little gang fighting, but, we grew up together from elementary school to high school. And so I had a gamut of friends, and I played instruments, and I was in theater and marching band, and I loved school. I loved school. I'm thinking about going back. If it wasn't for these darn student loans, I would definitely go back.
That doesn't seem right. That would prohibit you. That, lifelong learner is something that must serve you so well in your professional and personal life as well, too, just to always be inquisitive and to always learn. Do you have a hero? Anybody that you really look up to?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'll have to pick my mom. I love my mom. She's my buddy. I've watched her use what we call quiet courage. So she has suffered in her childhood, but she's always come out to be that protector. She said all she ever wanted to be was a mom, and now she's a professional mom, and I see her give. I see her love. She takes babies who have been drug exposed or who have come in failure to thrive, or are barely making it, and they say they just need some love. Is what the hospital say, that if you can keep them close. And she has I've seen her nurture child after child, and brought some of them literally back to life through her love. And that's the kind of person I want to be. I want to show love, because that's where I came from. My mom still, again, in my 40s, and if I'm having a bad day, I run to my mom, and she'll hold me, and she'll say, "Oh, baby, what's going on?" And she'll hold me, and we'll crack jokes, and she'll love on me until I can go home and then deal with whatever stress is in my life. My mom's my hero. I love my mommy.
She sounds like an absolutely wonderful person. You were lucky to grow up with such a hero. And it seems to me like that's where you got your extreme passion for helping young people from. Would you say that is true? Did you just kind of mimicking what your mom's doing, but in a different sort of way, in a professional career out, counseling and teaching and all these kinds of things?
Yeah, I would. I would definitely say that. Again, I hate to be just like a broken record, but just that's what I saw. That's all I saw. Like my grandmother, we would go to her house. She had She lived in the city of St. Louis. She had a 7-bedroom house that, she had 8 kids. So there was enough people, but then there was always room for guests, and all my cousins would be there. And, even on my dad's side, all my cousins, we would all actually pile at my mom's house. So cousins both sides, mom and dad, would be, at my mom's house, or, we would have family gatherings, or now we gather at my older sister's house and, just make a lot of noise and karaoke and just love on each other, nurture each other, take care of kids, always watching out for kids, not being offensive if someone corrects your children, because we understand that village and have a lot of people around me. I have a great village around me right now, and we all are caring for kids. That's what it is. We joke that if you want something to happen, then that's the last resort about telling me, because I'll turn you in. If you're hurting a kid, it doesn't matter who you are. And as much as I love my mom, if she's hurting a kid, I'm turning her in, because kids are my life. Got to protect them.
You truly were born to do this work, Sherrita. Thank you for everything you do. We do have to take a short break. When we come back, I'd like to ask you what your life motto is and talk a little bit about your work and what you think about the state of young people today. So we'll be right back after this short break. And we're back with Sherrita. And Sherrita, right before the break, I was asking you if you have a life motto. Do you have a life motto? And if so, what is it?
I do. One of the things I do at work is when we're doing orientation and I'm training my leaders, and I ask them, what's your life's values, your mission, and your vision, and help them. Because if we're going to lead in this social service arena, especially in this anti-trafficking arena, we need to have, you can't be that wounded healer. So you have to have a vision for your life so that you can do what the best for the people that we serve. So I look at my values as integrity and transparency and loyalty, how I base my life. My mission, one of the things I've said since high school is, you have to see me at my worst to love me at my best. And I believe that. And even my vision for life is to make the greatest impact through service and worship. And those are the way I live my life. One of the things that I really look at, that if you can see the worst in me and still love me, then you deserve to have that part of my life. You have earned the right to my vulnerability. So, and I try to be that when I'm working with the people, like living life, doing life with them, and seeing them even at their worst so that they can even love themselves at their best.
That's an incredible motto, and it's one that you made up. Usually when I ask guests that, they have one that somebody else has said. You've got your own. That's very, very cool. You also said, when we were getting to know each other, I don't know a stranger. And I've never heard anybody say that before. Can you talk a little bit about what that means? I don't know a stranger.
We are made to be afraid of strangers, that strangers have fear in them, where we have to be cautious with people who are who we don't know. So instead of looking at people as strangers, I always look at them as a potential friend. Like I said, I want to meet a new friend every day. So a stranger is just somebody. It's just somebody that I haven't made my friend yet. Like, I walk into a room expecting you to love me. So, and then I just want to share what I have gained. I never want to hold what I've gotten inside me. I want to give it to everybody else. So I can't do that if you're a stranger. So, like, Paul, you're going to be my new best friend. We're going to be, you're no longer a stranger, or, just the guy on the other end of the camera. We're now friends. So.
Wow. And you know what? You say that, but it is so true. There's something about you. I have to admit, when we get to know our guests for the first time and we learn and talk about each other, I immediately just felt like I really like you. I really think you're a cool person. You just got so many great things going on in your world, and there's something so transparent or something so upfront about you that it's just, I don't even know how to put words to it. But I think what you just described is really true. And I think it's got to be other people who see that too. When you walk into the room and say, you're going to be my friend, you just don't know it yet. I think that probably happens to you a lot, doesn't it?
It does. It does a whole lot more than it's supposed to, because I used to get in trouble all the time. I was like, stop talking to strangers. I'm like, they look so nice. Yeah, I used to get in so much trouble because I was always talking to strangers. Yeah,
that's funny.
That was me.
And you, before, when you were talking about your life motto, you had commented that you said, don't be a wounded healer. And how can you, or what do you do to avoid being a wounded healer in your youth work?
Wow. So, yeah, I learned the term wounded healer when I was in grad school, getting my master's. And it was something that stood out to me. It was, you have these wounds that are still open, and then you're trying to find your own healing through helping someone else. And instead of being someone who's healed, who's helping someone be healed also, you now have two wounded people, because any experience that someone may have could trigger, some brokenness in you. And if you're not able to to be able to get through your own junk, there's no way you're going to be able to help someone else. You have to be able, especially if you're with a client and they're in crisis, but you're triggered, like it's just a bad deal. So, being wounded, help me to not be a wounded healer is, I read. I've started recently reading a lot, probably for the past couple of years. I just picked up fantasy books, and it's probably going to be a little embarrassing. Probably the only thing that I say is embarrassing, but I love fantasy books. Like here, right now I'm reading this series called Zodiac Academy. And so it's a lot of mythological creatures. So I'm reading about vampires and werewolf. I would probably want to be a werewolf, honestly. So I thought I used to want to be a vampire, but I want to be a werewolf because they see their mate and then they're like, mate. And it's so... And then they talk about like just true love and everything, but like it's like it has like fairies and Pegasus and dragons, and I can just escape the world for a little while. I know that there's a real world out there, but it's not trauma therapy. It's not hearing about somebody being consistently raped or having to turn tricks for money or just to get some food for the night. So I retreat into the world of Pegasus and dragons and werewolves because it's fun and I like it.
Well, that's a good thing to do. And fiction is a wonderful escape. And drowning yourself in a book is a great way to spend some time and to unwind and to escape the sometimes harshness of the world we're living in, especially in these days lately. It is a wonderful opportunity. And as you were talking about that, I was wondering about something I said at the beginning of our interview together. I said, I don't know how you can keep working with young people that are sexually trafficked. I know somebody has to. I know for me, I'm a psychologist by trade, and I work directly with young people for many, many years. And that's one thing I couldn't hardly tolerate. I don't know. There's something about it that just felt so just incredibly wrong and awful and demonic. I don't know what the words are, but I just couldn't deal with it. And I know it's got to be hard for you to hear some of these just awful situations that young people find themselves in. Is fantasy reading one way to kind of not be that wounded healer and to escape from that, even if it's just temporarily?
It is, because you're right. It's really hard to hear those things. I actually started my career in residential, doing residential work, and I worked with juvenile sex offenders. So kids boys from 12 to 17 who had committed some kind of sex crime, and I thought that was what I was going to do for, be deal with that sexual maladaptive behavior. But then started looking at the victimization and wanted to help with that too. So getting into that world, like most of my books have a heroine. So she is a woman who is, overcomes, and I need to see that, that heroine, she is, even though she may be beat once, she gets up, she has the self-determination. So see myself in a lot of them where even though, things may be hard, I'm going to keep fighting because I deserve it. I deserve a life worth living. And so, so escaping into that world helps, remind me what's in me, that I have a life worth living, and everybody else should too. And if somebody else isn't going to do it, I will, because people burn out so easy in this field.
Yes.
So, we got to find a way to heal and get through it, because there's more people being hurt. So if, riding a back of a dragon for, a chapter will help me remember that, to be free, then when I come out of my fantasy world, then I can remember that, I can teach someone else how to be free.
I can't think of a better person for doing the work that you're doing than you. These young people must have an incredibly tough time trusting anybody that's in the adult world after things that have happened to them. And we were talking about how you're just that kind of person that walks in the room and everyone wants to be your friend. They're going to be your friend whether they want to or not. And the only way to really connect with these young people, especially the ones that have been traumatized so terribly bad, is to have a trusting figure. And you just come across so smooth and genuine and sincere. I got to believe these young people gravitate towards you.
Not all. Not all. I was joking with my staff yesterday about a young lady who, when she was about 14 or 15, she and I did not like each other. And it was so hard to do therapy with her. But we fought through it. And she's now 20 with her own child. And we were riding somewhere together, and then she said, "Miss Sherrita, you remember when you didn't like me?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I remember." And she was like, "But you loved me anyway." And I was like, "I know," but I said, "I guess you're hard to love, but you're loved." I said, "No, you're loved." She's like, "I know. That's why I came back." And I was like, "Well, good." And it was just that thought that, even though she knew I didn't hide it very well, I wasn't, my whole happy self that I'm, showing you now. I struggled with her because I didn't like her. She was hard. Like, she was mean. She was entitled, and we fought all the time. But at the end of the day, I always asked her, our hearts and mind clear? And she was like, "No." And I was like, "Well, what you need?" And we would just stop whatever she needed. And she was like, "Okay." And I was like, they tell you don't tell your clients you love them, but I did. I loved her. And she was like, "I love you." And I was like, "I love you more." And we would give each other the side hug and come in the next day hating each other again. But at the end of the day, I love you. I love you more. And we would keep going. And now she, our agency, we're who she trusts, because we showed her that love even when she wasn't lovable.
Sherrita, you are such an important person in the lives of so many people, and your upbringing, your faith, your personality that you just shine so brightly everywhere you go is such a great asset to our communities and our world in general. And I am so grateful you came on to be a guest on the podcast today, because it truly has been a pleasure getting to know you. And I hope that the stories you shared inspire other people to dig deep into what drives them and find their passion for young people, because you clearly have it. So thank you for being a guest on the show.
Thank you again for having me.
Before we go, I would like to give you a chance to say, what words of inspiration or wisdom would you like to share with our listeners?
I would probably say live life. Don't forget to live life. That we have our jobs, we have so many responsibilities, and our work is daunting. It is burdensome. It's hard. It's thankless. So in the midst of those things, don't forget to live. Don't forget to find something to make you laugh. Don't forget to, take a rest, go to sleep, take a nap, drink chocolate milk, laugh, do something, but live life. Don't forget to live.